There is a moment that very few people noticed, but those who did found it impossible to forget. It happened at Trooping the Colour in 2025. The cameras were rolling, the crowd was cheering, and the entire British royal family had gathered on the balcony of Buckingham Palace as they always do, dressed in perfect order, standing in perfect formation, smiling at perfect angles. Prince William was there. Princess Anne was there. King Charles and Queen Camilla. And somewhere in that line, a 7-year-old boy with a toothless grin, and no idea what the world was already deciding about him, stood waving his little hand at a crowd of thousands who adored him. Prince Louis. He was mimicking his grandfather. He was making faces. He was being scolded by his older brother George, who at 12 years old had already begun absorbing the weight of what it means to be born first. The cameras loved Louis. The crowd loved Louis. Everyone, it seemed, loved Louis, and that is precisely what makes what is happening right now so complicated and so quietly devastating for the people closest to him. Because behind the balcony smiles and the perfectly timed appearances, something has been shifting inside the House of Windsor. Conversations are being had in private rooms. Decisions are being made that Louis is too young to understand. And two of the most powerful figures in his life, his father, Prince William, and his great-aunt, Princess Anne, are at the center of a development that royal insiders are calling one of the most significant and quietly troubling announcements surrounding the youngest Wales child in years. This is not a story about a crisis in the traditional sense. There is no scandal, no emergency, no dramatic fall from grace. What it is instead is something far more complicated. The story of a child whose entire future inside an ancient institution is being reshaped by forces larger than any one person, and the tension between two royals who love him but see his world in profoundly different ways. To understand what is really happening, you have to go back. You have to understand the family he was born into, the institution that will define his life, and the very different visions of two people who are both trying to protect him, even if they disagree on what that protection should look like. Prince Louis Arthur Charles was born on the 23rd of April, 2018, at St. Mary's Hospital in London, and from the very first moment he was carried through those hospital doors into the arms of a waiting world, the cameras could not get enough of him. He was the third child of Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, and from the beginning he occupied a position in the British monarchy that was different from either of his siblings in ways that were subtle but enormously consequential. George was born to be king. Everyone knew it. The pressure of succession hovered over him from his first breath, and even in childhood he carried something in his posture, a certain gravity, an awareness that hinted at the life being prepared for him. Charlotte was different. She was fierce and confident and reminded people immediately of her great-aunt Princess Anne, the hardest-working royal of her generation, a woman who had never once stepped away from duty when it became inconvenient. Charlotte seemed destined, in the eyes of many royal watchers, to be her brother's greatest ally and most reliable support, the spare who understood her role and embraced it without complaint. And then there was Louis. Louis was something else entirely. He was the third born, the youngest. The one who, by every royal rule and historical precedent, held the most ambiguous position in the family. He was fourth in line to the throne, behind his grandfather Charles, his father William, and his older brother George, which meant that for Louis to ever wear the crown, a sequence of events would have to unfold so improbable that it barely warranted discussing. He was, by the monarchy's own internal logic, free in a way that neither George nor Charlotte could ever truly be. And he seemed to sense it, even as a small child. He waved when he wanted to wave. He made faces when the mood struck him. He reached out and grabbed chocolate from his father's hand at the Sandringham Christmas walkabout without a moment of self-consciousness, because why wouldn't he? The world had already decided Louis was the charming one, the funny one, the one who existed to remind everyone that behind all the ceremony and the protocol and the ancient weight of the crown, there were real children growing up inside those walls. But something has changed in recent months, and it has changed in ways that touch Louis more directly than almost anyone outside Kensington Palace has yet fully understood. It began, as so many things in the British monarchy begin, with a question of structure. Prince William has spent the last several years developing what royal correspondents have begun calling his vision for a slimmed-down monarchy, a leaner, more focused institution that sheds the excess of previous eras and concentrates its energy and resources on a smaller number of senior working royals. The idea is not new. King Charles spoke of it too, in the years before he ascended to the throne. But William has taken the concept further, and with more urgency, and with a specificity that is beginning to make very real impacts on very real people. William's proposals reportedly include stripping titles from non-working royals, enforcing strict property rules to prevent rent-free living and subletting, cutting palace staff significantly, and reducing public engagements to focus on meaningful causes rather than volume. He wants a monarchy that looks less like a ceremonial exhibition and more like a purposeful institution, one that the British public can justify supporting in the 21st century, when the questions being asked about the cost and the relevance of the crown are sharper than they have been in decades. The Royal Observer. The problem, and it is a genuine problem that William himself has acknowledged in private conversations, is that a slimmed-down monarchy has consequences for every member of the family, including the members who have not yet grown up enough to have any say in the matter. Prince Louis is fourth in line to the throne, and his future as a full-time working royal is far from guaranteed. Experts have begun openly discussing the possibility that he may very well explore opportunities outside the royal fold entirely. This is not necessarily a bad thing. It is, in many ways, the kind of freedom that a previous generation of royals would have envied deeply. But it is a development that carries its own complications, and it has created a quiet but increasingly serious conversation inside the royal family about what Louis's life is actually going to look like. AOL. William has been described as determined that his second and third-born children, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, are well-prepared and well-financed for independent lives, and will not fall into what he has called the same cycle of thwarted freedom that he believes affected his own brother, Prince Harry. He watched what happened to Harry. He watched a man who was beloved by the public, trained for royal service, and yet given no clear role, no defined purpose, no real place within an institution that claimed to need him. And whatever else people say about what followed, the departure, the interviews, the memoir, William has been clear in private that he does not want that for Louis. Marie Claire. But wanting something and being able to deliver it are very different things inside the British monarchy. And this is where Princess Anne enters the story in a way that has sent quiet reverberations through the inner circles of the royal family. Princess Anne is now 75 years old, and she has been a working member of the British royal family for more than 5 decades. She has carried out more official engagements than almost any other royal in modern British history. She does not take days off when she does not feel like working. She does not step back when the schedule becomes demanding. She is, by every meaningful measure, the template for what a royal with a sense of duty looks like. And she has not been shy, in conversations with family members and in carefully worded public statements, about her views on how the institution should be run. Royal experts have reported that Princess Anne is eager for Prince William to improve his work ethic and shed allegations of being work-shy as he prepares for his future role as king. Anne's motto has been described as simply, "Just get on with it," while William has sometimes appeared more concerned with the public narrative surrounding royal events rather than the events themselves. Fox News. This difference in philosophy is not new. It has existed between them for years. The older woman who learned her approach to royal life under Queen Elizabeth and the younger man who is trying to build something different from the institution he inherited. But in recent months, the disagreement has become more pointed, more personal, and more directly connected to the question of what happens to Louis as he grows up. Because what Anne is reported to have raised, quietly, persistently, in the way that Anne does everything, without drama but without backing down, is a concern about the pace and the direction of the changes William is proposing. She has reportedly expressed worry that in the rush to modernize, in the genuine and well-intentioned desire to protect Louis from the fate that Harry suffered, William risks doing something that could be just as damaging in a different way, making Louis feel like he does not belong to the institution at all. The history of the monarchy is full of royals who were neither heirs nor fully working members of the family, and the history is not uniformly kind to them. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes with being close to the center of something without being fully inside it, visible enough to be scrutinized, marginal enough to be overlooked, royal enough to carry the obligations of the position without always receiving the support and the structure that makes those obligations bearable. Anne knows this history better than almost anyone. She lived through it in her own way, and she is reported to have made clear, in conversations that have filtered through to royal correspondence through the usual careful channels, that her concern about what is being announced for Louis is not abstract. It is rooted in decades of watching what happens when the monarchy fails to think carefully about the human cost of its institutional decisions. What makes this development particularly significant is the timing. Louis is 7 years old. He is at the stage of childhood where the decisions being made around him, about his schooling, his public appearances, his relationship to the institution he was born into, will shape him in ways that cannot easily be undone later. William and Kate have been described as cautious about exposing their children to too much scrutiny in this digital age, and they know they must produce the children at certain times while keeping them under wraps the rest of the time. That philosophy has served the Wales children well so far, but it is a philosophy in tension with itself, and the tension is becoming harder to manage. AOL. Because you cannot simultaneously prepare a child for a life that may include significant public responsibilities and protect that child from all the experiences that preparation requires. At some point, decisions have to be made. Lines have to be drawn. And the lines being drawn around Louis right now, according to people close to the situation, are being drawn in a way that is raising genuine questions and genuine alarm among those who care most deeply about what his future looks like. What will become of Prince Louis is an increasingly complicated question for the monarchy. Royal biographer Sally Bedell Smith has observed that she would imagine Princess Charlotte will be part of the picture, but expressed uncertainty about Louis. Charlotte, currently third in line, has already shown confidence at public events that draws comparisons to her great-aunt Princess Anne, the monarchy's most relentless workhorse. Louis, meanwhile, fourth in line, remains largely shielded from the public eye, making appearances occasionally for endearing balcony moments, but otherwise enjoying a childhood mostly free from scrutiny. The Royal Observer. That shielding has been deliberate. William and Kate have both spoken, in various ways over the years, about their desire to give their children as normal a childhood as circumstances allow. They moved the family to Windsor. They chose schools that offered some degree of privacy. They limited the number of official appearances the children were expected to make, understanding that George in particular would face enough pressure soon enough, and that Charlotte and Louis deserved whatever protection could be offered. But there is a difference between protecting a child from unnecessary pressure and leaving a child without a framework for understanding the world they are going to inherit. And that difference is at the heart of what Princess Anne is reportedly concerned about. The disturbing development, as those inside the family are describing it, is not a single dramatic event. It is a pattern, a direction. A set of decisions accumulating into something that two of the most important figures in Louis's life are no longer fully agreed on. And that disagreement, quiet as it is beginning to matter in ways that reach far beyond palace walls. There is something both tender and difficult about watching a child stand on a balcony waving at a crowd that adores him, knowing that the adults around him are in the middle of decisions about his future that he cannot yet begin to understand. Louis doesn't know, when he reaches for his father's hand at a Christmas walkabout, that his father is wrestling with questions about what that hand will one day be expected to carry. He doesn't know that his great-aunt Anne, the woman who has given her entire life to the institution he was born into, has been raising concerns in private that carry the weight of everything she has seen and survived in 5 decades of royal service. He is 7, he is funny. He is, by all accounts, exactly the kind of child who makes the people around him smile without even trying. But the world he was born into does not stop moving just because he is still small enough to be carried on his father's shoulders. And the development that William and Anne are now navigating, together, however uncomfortably, will define more of Louis's life than anything that has happened to him so far. To understand why the situation surrounding Prince Louis has become so significant, and why Princess Anne's involvement carries the particular weight that it does, it helps to understand something about how Princess Anne herself came to be the person she is, and what she has seen inside this institution over more than half a century of service. Anne Elizabeth Alice Louise was born in 1950, the second child of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. From the very beginning, her position in the family was defined by a familiar pattern. She was the daughter, not the son. She was the second born, not the heir. She was, by the logic of the institution into which she was born, the spare. And in that era, the spare who was also female occupied a position of particular ambiguity. She was expected to represent the crown with grace and dignity while receiving a fraction of the resources, the training, and the formal preparation that her older brother Charles was given. What Anne did with that ambiguity is one of the great stories of the modern British monarchy. She became, over time, the hardest-working royal of her generation. She turned the lack of a defined role into the most defined role of all, the one who simply showed up every time without complaint, without drama, and without the kind of public navel-gazing that has come to define so many members of her family in the decades since. Anne's motto has been described, consistently and across multiple royal sources, as simply just get on with it. She carried out more official engagements year after year than almost any other working royal. She represented the crown in places that Charles and later William rarely visited. She did the unglamorous work and the glamorous work with equal commitment, and she did it for decades without once stepping back to question whether the institution deserved her loyalty. Fox News. This is the woman who is now, quietly but insistently, raising concerns about what is happening with Prince Louis. Understanding what those concerns are and why they matter requires stepping back further still, to the question of what William is actually trying to build. Because whatever disagreements exist between William and Anne, they do not exist in a vacuum. They exist inside a monarchy that is genuinely under pressure in ways it has not experienced in living memory, and William's response to that pressure has been shaped by experiences that Anne, for all her wisdom, did not share. Royal astrologist and longtime royal observer Debbie Frank has described 2026 as a year in which William will be assuming a bigger role, noting that from February onward, both his sun and moon in the sign of Cancer are picking up a big change that activates his sense of duty. William will show that empathy is his superpower as a future king, and there will be a greater requirement for him to be present both globally and within the UK. That language, empathy as superpower, is revealing, because it points to what William genuinely believes distinguishes his vision of the monarchy from what came before. He wants an institution that connects with people, that listens, that does not simply perform its rituals and expect deference in return. Hello. Sources close to William have noted that he is becoming more serious, and that the palace is consciously elevating and presenting him in an authoritative manner, anticipating what's to come. One source noted that no power has been relinquished to William from King Charles, but the visible shift in how William presents himself is unmistakable. The list. But here is where the story becomes complicated in ways that reach directly into Louis's situation. William's vision of a modern, slimmed-down monarchy is built on a central premise, that the institution can be leaner, more purposeful, and more respected if it concentrates its resources and its public presence on fewer people doing more meaningful work. That premise is intellectually coherent. It responds to genuine public pressure and genuine institutional problems. But it has a consequence that William, for all his careful thinking about these matters, has not fully resolved. What happens to the people who are cut from the slim? This question is not new to the British monarchy. It is the question that has haunted every version of every conversation about reforming the institution for the last 100 years. Monarchies that slim down successfully tend to do so because they have found a way to give their non-working members a path, a dignity, a purpose, a life that is neither fully inside the institution nor completely outside it. Monarchies that slim down badly tend to produce people who fall through the gap, close enough to the crown to carry its social weight, but not close enough to receive its support. Harry's story is the most recent and most visible example of what falling through that gap looks like. And William, who watched his brother's departure closer than anyone, is determined that Louis will not follow the same path. William has been described as determined that Charlotte and Louis are well-prepared and well-financed for independent lives, and will not fall into what he sees as the cycle of thwarted freedom that he believes affected Harry. That determination is genuine. It is rooted in real pain and real observation. But the way he is translating that determination into concrete decisions about Louis's life is where the complication arises. Marie Claire. Because the plan, as it has begun to take shape, involves preparing Louis from an early age for a life that sits largely outside the formal structure of working royal life. This is not, and this is important, the same thing as abandoning Louis. It is not cutting him off or withdrawing support. It is, in William's framing, the opposite. It is giving Louis something that Harry never had, which is a clear-eyed, early understanding that his future does not have to be defined by the institution, and that there is honor and freedom in building a life that the monarchy supports but does not control. In theory, this is compassionate. In practice, Anne believes it carries a risk that William is not fully seeing. The risk, as Anne has reportedly articulated it, is this: a child who is told from an early age that he is being prepared for life outside the institution may grow up not just prepared for that life, but also without a genuine sense of belonging to the family he was born into. The monarchy is not just an institution. It is a family. It is a shared identity, a shared history, a set of shared experiences that binds its members to each other and to something larger than any one of them individually. If Louis is told, even gently, even lovingly, that the institution is not really for him, he may absorb not just the practical message, but the emotional one too. And that is the message Anne is pushing back on. Anne is described as fond of her nephew William and adamant about supporting him, and the feeling is reportedly mutual. She will be by William's side if she is still working when he accedes to the throne. But being supportive does not mean being silent, and Anne has never been a woman who stays silent when she believes something important is at stake. Her decades of service have given her a perspective on the monarchy that is different from William's in one crucial way. She has seen what happens not just when the institution fails its members, but when its members are allowed to drift away from it without ever being given a genuine reason to stay. Fox News. There is something quietly heartbreaking about the picture that emerges when you put these pieces together. On one side, a father who loves his youngest son deeply and is terrified of repeating the failures he watched destroy his brother's relationship with the family they both came from. On the other side, a great-aunt who has given her entire life to the same institution that William is now trying to reshape, and who believes that in trying to protect Louis from one kind of damage, William may be inadvertently setting him up for another. And in the middle of it all, a 7-year-old boy who has no idea any of this is happening. In the 2025 Christmas card photo, Louis showed off his toothless smile as he sweetly sat in his father's lap, while Charlotte rested her head on William's shoulder. It is a picture of a family that is, in so many ways, doing everything right, choosing each other, being present, showing up in the ways that matter. William and Kate have worked hard to build something warmer and more human than the royal family many of them grew up in. The formality has softened. The emotional language has opened up. The children are allowed to be children in ways that were not always available to previous generations of royal kids. AOL. But the debate about Louis's future is a reminder that being a good parent inside an ancient institution is not always the same thing as being a good parent in the conventional sense. The decisions that William and Kate make about Louis are not just personal decisions. They are institutional decisions. They will set precedents. They will shape how future non-working royals are treated and prepared and supported. And the pressure to get them right, not just for Louis's sake, but for the sake of every royal who comes after him, is part of what is making this development so charged. William and Kate are reportedly focused on preparing Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis for their future roles while protecting them from unnecessary public pressure. Their parenting approach has been praised for appearing grounded and thoughtful. That praise is deserved. But groundedness and thoughtfulness, while necessary, are not sufficient when the stakes are this high. And one of the things that makes Princess Anne's involvement in this situation so significant is that she is not raising her concerns from a place of opposition or disapproval. She is raising them from a place of experience, and from a place of genuine love for a child who cannot yet speak for himself. Ripe news. The conversation between William and Anne has reportedly been conducted with more care than many of the family's internal disagreements. There are no shouting matches, no dramatic confrontations, no leaked briefings designed to embarrass the other side. It is, by all accounts, a conversation between two adults who respect each other and who are both trying to do right by a child they both love, but who see the path to that goal in different ways. What makes it a disturbing development is not the disagreement itself. Families disagree, institutions disagree. That is normal, and it is even healthy. What makes it disturbing is the context in which it is happening. A monarchy that is already under more pressure than it has faced in a generation. An institution where the number of working royals available to carry the load is shrinking, and a child at the center of it all who is growing up fast. Prince William has revealed that one familiar parenting battle with Charlotte and Louis is still playing out behind closed doors. That small, human detail is easy to smile at, the image of a future king negotiating bedtime or homework with a 7-year-old who doesn't want to cooperate. But it is also a reminder that behind the institution, behind the debates and the decisions and the quiet disagreements between senior royals, there are real people navigating real life. Louis is not a policy question. He is a child. He is somebody's son, somebody's little brother, somebody's great-nephew, the royal observer. And the people who love him most are now faced with questions about his future that have no clean answers, questions that have been building quietly for months and have now become impossible to ignore. The question of what Prince Louis's life will actually look like as he grows up is one that does not have a simple answer, and it is unlikely to have one for some time. But the contours of the debate happening around him are becoming clearer, and they reveal something important not just about Louis's situation, but about the British monarchy itself. What it is trying to become, what it is afraid of losing, and how it handles the human cost of institutional change. To understand where things stand now, it helps to look at what is already known about the direction William is moving, and what that direction means in concrete terms for a child, who is currently too young to sit in the room where these decisions are being made. The Trooping the Color in 2026 revealed something significant about the royal family's evolution. The balcony scene depicted what commentators described as a slimmed-down monarchy. William aims to modernize the institution through what has been described as a corporate-style restructuring, focusing on financial transparency and social impact. The optics were deliberate. The absence of certain family members was not accidental. And the message being sent, that the monarchy of the future will be smaller, tighter, more selective about who stands at its center, was heard clearly by those paying attention. The royal observer. That message is directly relevant to Louis. Not immediately, not urgently, but in the medium-term future that William and Anne are already thinking about, it matters enormously. If the institution is going to be smaller, if the circle of working royals is going to shrink rather than grow, then Louis's position within that circle becomes a question that needs to be answered, not eventually, but now, while there is still time to shape his preparation and his expectations in ways that serve him well. As the youngest child of the Prince and Princess of Wales, Prince Louis's future is arguably more flexible than either of his siblings. He is neither heir to the throne nor the first spare in line. Thus, experts believe he is likely to explore life outside the royal fold. That flexibility is real, and it is valuable, and there is a version of Louis's future in which it becomes the greatest gift anyone could have given him. A life built on his own terms, supported by the family he was born into but not defined by it, that is not a diminished life. In many ways, it is a fuller one. AOL. But there is a version in which the flexibility becomes something else entirely. A polite way of saying that the institution doesn't have a place for him, dressed up in the language of freedom and preparation and modern thinking. And the difference between those two versions, the gift and the abandonment, depends entirely on how the next several years are navigated, which is precisely what makes Anne's concerns so urgent. What Princess Anne brings to this conversation that William, for all his intelligence and his genuine care, cannot fully replicate is the perspective of someone who has lived her entire adult life as a royal without being heir to the throne. She knows what it is to be important enough to be called upon constantly, but not important enough to be at the center. She knows what it is to carry the family name and the family obligation and the family expectations without the corresponding clarity of purpose that comes with being the heir. And she knows, more intimately than almost anyone, what keeps a person sane and grounded and useful inside that position, not freedom from the institution, but a genuine place within it. That is what she is fighting for on Louis's behalf. Not a formal working royal role. That conversation is years away and will depend on factors no one can predict right now. What she is pushing for is something more fundamental, a sense of belonging, a message given consistently and early and clearly that Louis is not being prepared for exile from his own family, but for a life that includes the institution even if it is not consumed by it. The distinction may sound subtle. In practice, it is the difference between a child who grows up knowing he has a home inside the monarchy, even if he builds his life mostly outside it, and a child who grows up sensing that the home was never really his to begin with. Royal watchers who have followed the internal dynamics of the British monarchy for years point to several historical parallels that are relevant here. The spares of previous generations, the younger siblings, the non-working members, the royals who were loved by the public but given no formal role, did not always navigate their in-between positions with grace. Some of them became resentful. Some became reckless. Some simply disappeared into private lives that were wealthy but profoundly lonely in ways that the public never fully saw. Harry's situation is the most recent and most dramatic example, but there are older ones. Royals who slipped between the cracks of an institution that was too rigid to accommodate them and too proud to admit it. The common thread in most of those stories is not dramatic failure. It is drift, a gradual separation from the center of the family, unplanned and unacknowledged, that only became visible once it was too late to reverse. Anne does not want that for Louis, and whatever her disagreements with William about how to prevent it, her concern is not about the result but the method. She believes, based on everything she has observed and lived through, that the best protection the family can give Louis is not a clean exit from the institution, but a secure and loving place within it. And that right now, the plans being made around him risk prioritizing the first at the expense of the second. As 2026 began, the focus on Forest Lodge as the Wales family home was framed by a royal historian as signaling a different kind of lifestyle, very centered on their children. The prince and princess have settled into Windsor with George, Charlotte, and Louis, and the family is being described as a unit that is preparing carefully for what comes next. That preparation is real, and it is loving. But preparation for what comes next requires knowing what the next actually looks like, and for Louis, that picture remains, as of right now, genuinely unclear. Yahoo! What is clear is that the development William and Anne are navigating together carries weight that extends well beyond the palace. There are people across Britain and around the world who have watched Louis grow up on balconies and at Christmas walkabouts, and at Trooping the Color, who have smiled at his antics and been charmed by his complete inability to behave in the way official appearances usually demand. They love him in the particular way that people love a royal child who seems unimpressed by being royal, with warmth and amusement and a kind of protective tenderness. Those people deserve to know, at some point, what the institution they support is planning for him. And that conversation is part of what is now being forced by the development at the center of this story. The announcement that William and Anne are openly navigating. The disturbing acknowledgement that what happens next for Louis is no longer a vague future question, but an immediate and pressing one. Looking at what happened to Prince Harry, who William apparently thinks was treated unfairly growing up, William is determined that his second and third-born children are well-prepared and well-financed for independent lives. That determination shapes every decision being made right now. But good intentions and good outcomes are not the same thing, and the history of the British monarchy is littered with well-intentioned decisions that produced consequences nobody planned for. Marie Claire. What gives this situation its particular edge, what makes it disturbing in the specific way that word applies here, is the combination of factors converging simultaneously. A 7-year-old who is old enough to begin absorbing emotional messages, but too young to understand the institutional debates happening around him. A father who is stepping into the most demanding role of his life, and trying to do it while simultaneously protecting children who cannot yet protect themselves. A great aunt who has watched this institution for 7 decades, and who believes she knows, with the hard-won certainty of long experience, what the consequences of getting this wrong will look like. And a monarchy that is changing faster than it has in a generation, under public pressure, that is not going to relent regardless of how carefully the palace manages the messaging. The preparation of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis for their own futures within the firm is an ongoing task that William and Kate are taking seriously. But the family will also have to continue preparing for their eventual roles as king and queen, a prospect described by royal correspondent Jenny Bond as rather daunting and always present. Daunting is the right word. And the daunting nature of it all, the weight of the institution pressing down on a family that is genuinely trying to be a family while also serving a function no family should be expected to serve, is visible in every part of this story. The list. Louis, for now, remains mostly unaware of all of it. He goes to school. He wears his little navy suits to Easter services and his Christmas jumpers to Sandringham. He makes faces at the cameras when he thinks he can get away with it and gets told off by his older brother when he can't. He is, by every measure available to the outside world, a happy child, full of life, full of mischief, loved by parents who have made it a priority to keep him as close to normal as their extraordinary circumstances allow. But the world does not wait for children to be ready. And the decisions being made around Louis right now, quietly, carefully, with love but also with disagreement, will follow him for the rest of his life. Princess Anne knows that. It is, in many ways, the thing she knows best. She has spent 75 years inside an institution that does not easily forgive the mistakes it makes with its children, and she has no intention of watching those mistakes be repeated if she can help it. Her involvement in this development is not an interference. It is the act of someone who has earned the right to speak, who has paid for that right with decades of service, and who is using it now, when it matters, on behalf of a child who cannot yet speak for himself. Despite any personal differences, Anne is adamant about supporting the heir to the throne. She is fond of her nephew William and will be by his side when he accedes. That loyalty is not in question. What is in question is whether loyalty to William means silence when she believes he is moving in a direction that could hurt someone they both love. And Anne has never been a woman who confused loyalty with silence. Fox News. What happens next is genuinely uncertain. The development at the center of this story is not resolved. The announcement that has emerged from the conversations between William and Anne is not a final decision but a direction. A set of choices being made in real time, about a real child, by people who are doing their best and who disagree about what their best actually looks like. As Prince William continues stepping into a more influential leadership role, speculation about his future reign is only expected to grow stronger. Through determination, strategic thinking, and a modern outlook, the Prince of Wales appears increasingly prepared to guide the monarchy into its next chapter. That next chapter will include Louis. It cannot exclude him, whatever structural decisions are made about his formal role. The question is what kind of inclusion it will be. A genuine one, in which he knows he belongs and is given the tools to build a life that honors that belonging without being crushed by it. Or a partial one, warm in intention but hollow in practice, that leaves him in the same ambiguous position that has caused so much damage to so many people in this family before him. Ripe news. The British monarchy has a long memory, and it carries the weight of everything it has failed to learn from. The people inside it who understand that weight best, people like Princess Anne, who has watched and worked and endured for half a century, are the ones most worth listening to when they raise their voices. She is raising her voice now, not in anger, not in opposition, in love. In the particular love of someone who knows what this institution can do to the people it fails to hold properly, and who is determined, with everything she has left, to make sure that one 7-year-old boy with a toothless grin and absolutely no idea what is being decided about his future does not become another chapter in a story that has already broken too many hearts. What William does with that, what the family does with it, what the monarchy does with it, is the question that matters now. And the world is watching, even if Louis is not.